just to seize on one piece you put in play there, here's why good and evil can't be permanent in the usual sense, certainly not in the Christian or Judeo-Christian sense. One is the Judeo-Christian notion of good and evil doesn't even map on to Eastern religion.
But Sam, you made a good evil versus evil claim in the moral landscape.
No, but it's also in an Eastern context, in a Buddhist or Hindu context, the evil isn't really evil, it's just ignorance. Now you might dispute that. You might say, well, that's not really, they haven't met a sufficiently evil person if they could think that. But the reality is that there are billions of people who have a different rubric under which they look at these things.
Sam, you can't make that case.
But let me add another piece here,
we need to ask them.
Okay. You guys need to vote.
Do you guys want this conversation to continue, or do you want Q&A to begin? I don't know which one you're cheering for.
Give them a pause and ask about
First
Q&A.
group is the group that wants this conversation to continue. All right.
Okay. Well,
and now the group that would prefer Q&A.
Okay. Well,
it was the former.
What's disturbing is that many of the same people were clapping. And that proves what Jordan was just saying about the two hemispheres of the human brain.
And metaphorical beliefs,
so look, I mean, it seems to me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you made an absolute moral claim in the moral landscape, and that's what grounds your argument. The absolute moral claim.
Let's just take this evil piece, because it'll be interesting if it's not totally on point. Evil is a category of human misbehavior, human intention, that we don't understand significantly at the level of the brain. But if we did understand it totally at the level of the brain, then every evil person we had in the dock at trial would be just like Charles Whitman with his brain tumor after he shot up everyone at the University of Texas, right? So like he's the prototypically evil mass murderer, but he's complaining about this change that overcame his personality, and he thinks it would be a good idea that if after the cops kill me, you autopsy my brain because I don't know why I'm doing any of this, right? And so then you look at someone like Saddam Hussein, or the worst evil person you could imagine, and you would say, well, he's actually unlucky. There but for the grace of biology go I. Because if I had that brain, if I had those genes, if I had those influences that gave me those synapses, I would be just like him. Now, if you think there's some other element that gives us free will, and now then you and I are disagreeing, then that's a factual claim that's at variance with mine. But if we are just, on some level, malfunctioning biological systems when we're being evil, then a complete understanding of evil would cancel that category.
We introduced a whole set of other things here in the last little round about free will and evil. But
I just want to make it clear why I went there. So you were saying this is I forgot the word you used, inevitable or ineluctable or it's permanent. The implication is that this category is permanent, and I'm saying that I don't think evil in that sense is a permanent category for us. It awaits more information and insight.
Okay. We're going to distinguish for a minute good versus evil and good versus bad, just for the sake of conceptual clarity. In the moral landscape, you make a fundamental axiomatic claim. It looks like a moral claim. Maybe it's a claim of fact. And the claim is there are bad lives and good lives.
Sure.
And the claim you make is that that's universally true.
Well, it's true for the requisite minds.
Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, doesn't matter.
Okay, but evil. So yes, I'm not telling you that you should purge the word evil from your vocabulary. I use the word all the time, and I think it's useful. It's a motivating word. I'm just saying that we can understand this continuum of good and bad, or positive and negative, in ways that don't use certainly don't use the Judeo-Christian framework for valuing these things. Because if you take the Buddhist framework and map it onto this continuum, you don't get good and evil. You get essentially wisdom and ignorance. Evil is ignorance of all the well-being you and others would experience if you behaved another way. Right? That's the Buddha's game, or even within Hinduism. And this connects to your love of stories. You take the Hindu text, the Ramayana, which is just a foundation. It's doing the work that the Bible is doing for Jews and Christians. In that the worst guy in the Ramayana, the 10-headed demon Ravana, the prototypically evil person, is at bottom really not a bad guy. He's a great sage who is just, in a bad mood, essentially, right? I mean, he was obscured by ignorance. And so it is in the Buddhist canon. The Buddha meets a serial killer who, is wearing a garland of human fingers around his neck, named Angulimala, but he was just one conversation away from being fully enlightened, right? I mean, he was like, it's a different picture of possibility. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. Let's be agnostic about that. I'm challenging your claim that there's something so prescient and useful and durable about the Judio Christian framework.
I wasn't making that claim in this
we're stuck with it for all time. Well,
I wasn't making that claim. I was making the claim that in the moral landscape, you laid out a distinction between the bad life and the good life. Forget about good and evil. The bad life and the good life, hell and heaven, the bad life and the good life, and that distinction was not only factual but universal. And so since you made that axiomatic,
given the right mind. So we could imagine a mind. I mean, this is an example.
Okay,
I think I give.
In a right mind.
But we could create circumstances that seem perverse to us that we would recoil from. You could create a universe of perfectly matched sadists and masochists, say, right? So you have the people who are real sadists, who in our world would be terrible actors, but in their world, they're surrounded by people who want to be mistreated. Now, again,
if you're a real sadist, you never mistreat a masochist when he asks you to.
Okay, well, these are... granted. I'm not...
Sorry,
I'm not sure the human categories even exist.
Couldn't
but,
resist.